So, Gareth, you're going to be talking about the eighth wonder of the world, which is your body. So,
well, yes, the eighth wonder of the world. So you've heard about the seven wonders of the world, of course. And the eighth wonder of the world, up until this point in my life, has been compound interest. If you understand that. And but most people understand that, but don't really understand it until they make money with compound interest, And Frank talked about this subject a lot earlier on when he talked about doing the smaller things over time, and it takes time. And one of the reasons we don't get going, or we don't stick to things which make a positive difference, in my opinion, is that we don't see it today. You don't eat a bad meal today and get a heart attack tomorrow, or the other way around. You don't have a really nice diet today and be cured of all your sickness tomorrow. It takes time, it takes consistency and persistency, Janie. I had persistency, a different P on that, actually. I wanted to tell you a story today, and it's about 7 doctors, in fact, and then I'm going to talk to you about the eighth wonder of the world, which includes your body. And it's a story that I've experienced because I got a lot of catarrh when I was a lad. And I went to the doctor, and as it happened, this doctor was also called Davies, my second name, but no relation. And he was an old guy even then. I was probably, I first remember going maybe 10 or 12 years old, and which was a long time ago. And he was Dr. H.L.S. Davies in Cardiff, because that's where I lived. And I said, look, I'm back here again for more medicine to cure my catarrh. And he said, no. He said, you can't do anything about it. Because I asked him, why do I get this? He said, it's because Cardiff is in a basin, and it's actually called Catardiff. And he laughed, and I went, all right, okay. And I sort of accepted it then. This is a doctor telling a 12-year-old. So I continued to take the penicillin 2-3 times a year, every time I got blocked up, until I met the second doctor. And this was a guy who I had trouble with my knee, and I went to an osteopath. And this guy was a brilliant osteopath, and he was actually really helping ballerinas in London as well. He was traveling up to London once a month to help these ballerinas, because he knew every bone and every muscle in the body without referring to a book at all. He was incredible, a little bit crazy, I think, but incredible. And I told him about, I was still getting this problem with my sinuses. And he looked at me, and he was very direct. He just said, well, you shouldn't eat dairy. And I went, why not? He said, well, just do it. And I went, okay, I'll just take his advice. And from that moment on, I never had another issue. I've never had another issue with blocked sinuses, which was a consistent problem for me. So that was the start of me looking at my journey. And then some years later, perhaps 2 or 3 years later, I was in Bristol, and I was at a veg fest. And because by that time I stopped eating dairy, so I consider myself a vegetarian. And I went to this veg fest, and I saw this book called The China Study. I thought, okay, I read the cover. I said, oh, it sounds interesting. I'm ready for this. I'll get through this. I'll get through this book. And that's written by Dr. Colin Campbell and his son Thomas, and an amazing, amazing book, which really hit me between the eyes at that time. And that made me go searching for other stuff. And in that book, there was reference to another doctor, a doctor called Dr. John McDougall. And so, long story short, I read some of his stuff. I ended up going to study under Dr. McDougall 3 times over the next couple of years, and took my family to America so they could experience it. And it was incredible. So that's what I call he was the 4th wonder of the world. The 5th one was someone I met on that journey to America, and was just around the corner from Dr. McDougall, but I didn't really fully understand what he was talking about the first time I met him. And I want to get that message over to people is, if you don't understand, when even some of these 3 doctors I'm associated with here, when they talk about it, even though I get it, you may not get it initially if you don't have experience of a plant-based diet. And I didn't understand what Dr. Doug Lisle was talking about when he talked about something that Frank has just mentioned in a different way in his book, The Pleasure Trap. And it's about the brain adaptation, how long it takes to get used to certain foods, and for our brain to understand the changes that we're making to our diet in our body. So he was the fifth one. And then the sixth one was another American doctor. And I was knocked out when I saw this. And you can very easily see a real visual way this guy made a difference, which is Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn. If you just go to his website, and on his front of his website, he's got these 3 pictures, maybe called cardiograms or maybe. And you can see an artery now, next year, and a year after, and you can see what happened to this artery in real time each year, on when the diet was changed by this guy, from a blocked artery to a partially blocked artery to a completely clear, healthy artery. And I just thought, wow, that is, it's a wonder of the world. This is that a heart could actually be healed. Then we get to, 7, 8, and 9. Well, you've been listening to those guys today, if you've been watching this. And there is so much available for free, I have to say, most of it, from Frank, from Janie, from Jean, that if you don't take advantage of that, this is just me talking, they don't know I'm going to say this, but if you don't take advantage of going to their site, of picking up the freebies, of watching the videos, of listening to the recordings, I mean, even something like Janie talked about, a machine you can buy to put on your chest and get you back to sleep. She's got something on her website that gets me to sleep almost every night if I need it, So go there and search this stuff, because it's free. And these guys have, they're really the 7th wonder of the world. So the 8th wonder of the world, I put 2 things together in there, which is what I talked about right at the beginning, which is compound interest. The compound effect of changing to a plant-based diet is amazing, but you don't see, or you might not see it very quickly. You might see it quickly within a few days, a week with certain things, but most things like heart disease, it's going to be over years, over decades. But you know what? The body is so powerful, and it's so capable of healing itself, given the right environment and the right food and drink, that it doesn't matter how old you are. You can heal yourself. Your body can heal itself of major diseases, even if they're quite established in you, So don't underestimate what it can do when you give your body the right things, and over time you experience compound interest in health. Thanks.
Wow, that was brilliant. That really was. I enjoyed hearing that and your journey. And especially just eliminate dairy, get rid of it. Yeah, why? Just do it. That was awesome.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Absolutely amazing, Gareth. Thank you so much. Absolutely superb. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that when you what's really came home for me there with what you were saying was that people really don't understand just how capable a body is of healing itself. When I tell people that I went from being 10 years in a wheelchair to actually, within a space of 3 weeks, just 3 weeks, when I first went vegan, raw vegan, I went from being told I would never walk again and completely dependent upon other people for everything, to actually being able to walk 3 miles up and down the beach every day, followed by 2 hours back-to-back Pilates and yoga classes. It is my mind is still blowing. It's still blown. And what I was going to say was that, if, in a way, because that happened a long time ago, you look back at it and you think, gosh, did that really happen? But you see, the thing is, it really did. And I also think one of the problems is that we can see, people adopt these changes, they make these changes. And I think the problem is that sometimes it goes a bit wrong, because I think we then tend to think, gosh, I'm okay now. It's just, I just changed my diet for 3 weeks and it's now rejigged all my body chemistry and I'm okay now. I can go back to eating the way I was eating, which for me wasn't terrible. It was actually, what was back then in the 90s touted as being a healthy diet, oily fish and salads and a glass of red wine. But for me, it wasn't right. And I was just getting, the inflammation levels just getting worse and worse and worse. And it took me, going back to what Frank was saying, you know, and what you were saying, Jean, you know, you fall off the wagon 7 times, but you get back up that 8th time. And I kept sort of going back and forward, back and forward, back and forward to, you know, sort of plant-based, not plant-based, plant-based, not plant-based. The thing that finally, once, you know, decided it for me was seeing that actually, yes, there was definitely a relationship between me being able to walk or me not being able to walk. Mm-hmm. But then, of course, I then also saw the, you know, the documentaries like Earthlings and Forks Over Knives and Eating and so on, and suddenly realized and made the connection, oh, there's this whole animal rights issue as well that goes hand in hand with all of this. And that was the thing that then, for me, flipped that switch and enabled me to actually, you know, just totally, you know, have the changes integrated into my life and so on. But just 3 weeks for me, that's all it took.
That's incredible.
Yeah, yeah. I remember doing a retreat and taking, I know you'll have seen this sort of thing, but I remember taking, you know, I was holding a retreat in Spain, and I had a lady come along and she'd had all sorts of really horrendous health problems. But on this retreat, we were only there, it was only a 7-night retreat, and six nights, 7 days, and she lost 1.5 stone. And we were not eating. We were eating, believe me, we were eating. We were eating the finest, most gorgeous plant-based meals, lots and lots of food, piled high, fabulous chef who really knew what he was doing. And my goodness, you know, yet still she dropped 1.5 stone, and she was not morbidly obese by a long chalk. But it just goes to show, when you give the body the nutrients that it needs, it lets go of all of the stuff that it doesn't need.
Well, again, you're absolutely right, Jane, and we don't see it over time. We don't see the effect it's having. And now, you know, I'm 61 now, so some of the people I played football with, and I look back at, I was looking back last week. This is really what got me onto this. So I was looking back at a bag of old photographs, and my wife said, "Oh, you need to catalog them instead of just having them in a plastic bag." But there's a lot of football shots in there, and I'm looking at these team photographs.
Yeah.
And he's passed away. He's passed away. He's got cancer. He's got diabetes. You know, he's so big that he can't move around anymore. And here am I. I'm not trying to big myself up. I'm just saying it's the effect of the diet in you know, almost perfect blood pressure, whatever that is, you know, about 110 over 80, and a heart rate of 49 most days. It's so frustrating to see, isn't it? Sometimes to see people, because they can be this close to being successful, but they just don't keep it going for long enough, and they never experience what they could.
I will say another observation, actually, Gareth, and this isn't sort of just to be like all sucky and everything, but I was just going to say that actually I didn't realize that you just turned 61, and I would challenge anybody to actually be able to accurately guess your age. And I don't know if you feel the same, Jean. I don't know if you feel, but Gareth looks remarkably many decades younger than his actual chronological age. You know,
true.
It'd be really interesting to actually sort of work out your biological age, because, you know, I think you'd come in decades younger.
Yeah. Well, I put it all down to the plant-based diet. Yeah.
It is. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Well, I've got a girlfriend, and we went to school together. And she's 3 days older than I am, and I frequently point that out to her. So, but if you look at the two of us side by side, it's like, oh my God, she's already had several strokes. She's got type 2 diabetes. She's got gout. She's got all these issues and health issues she's constantly posting on Facebook. And after the first stroke, I went over to her house and I spent the weekend with her. I bought her pans. I bought her food. I bought her the movie Forks Over Knives had just come out. So I bought her a copy of the movie. We sat down and watched it together. And she went plant-based for about 6 months. Yeah. And she was like, oh my God, my type 2 diabetes is coming down. My blood sugars are phenomenal. And she was starting to see a lot of changes. But she went out one day on a ride, and they went past this place that is a local icon where we grew up called Blackie's, and they're renowned for their hot dogs. And she stopped, got a hot dog, and that was it. That she spiraled out of control and never went back. So she fell down, but she never got back up. And I continue to see, and if you look at the difference between the two of us, it's like, oh, wow, night and day. And you're right, Gareth. I mean, and I have friends who've already passed away and have died of cancer or this health or that, especially where I grew up I grew up in Connecticut. And there's this one area of town that is renowned for cancer. And because underneath where this area is, they did a lot of mining back in the day, like in the 1800s. So there's a lot of chemicals that are being released up in the houses that were built on it. This pocket of the area of these people all have cancer. And you can they created a website for it of our town because of this area where these people live it's a very high incidence of cancer. So it's just crazy when you start to see and look back at, the class that I was in when I graduated high school, like a lot of them are gone. And I just turned 60 myself. And, it's like, when you see this and you see the power of this, it's like, if you look back in nature and just think back to nature, all animals, they're born, they live, have a good life, and then they die very quickly. And it's the same if you look at rural China, circling back to the China study, those people would live a very, very healthy, long life, and then usually pass away in their sleep one night. Mm-hmm. And it would happen very quickly. You would, with a short period of time where you just start not feeling well, and then you quickly die. But I think we may be living longer, but we're dying slower. And it's so sad to see this progression. And so to know that we can make these changes, and even like Eric Adams, who's currently running for mayor of New York City, his mother, who had been diabetic for 30 years on heavy drugs, insulin, heavy drugs, in 4 months was able to reverse her diabetes in 4 months after 30 years. So the body is so resilient, as you said, Janie, and if we give it the chance and we stop abusing it and start putting the right foods into it and exercising, and I just got to put this out there because we've got to get the toxins out, because we're being exposed to a lot of toxins in our personal care products, the environment, what we're doing. And we can't be perfect, but there's a lot of things we can do. So. Mm-hmm.
Can I just mention another thing which I think is really important? And I was just thinking back to, what have I done to get these results? And one thing which I haven't mentioned, which is really important in there, 30 years ago, I invested in something, and I probably invested 2 or 3 times since with moving houses, and that's a top quality water filtration system. So I would say 99% of the water I've ingested in the last 30 years has been cleaned by an ultraviolet light and a carbon block filter in one through a filter. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think that makes a big difference.